Alright, this lesson is called Partial Quotient Division with Dave. Okay, so here's the problem. We started out with this problem. We have to divide 360 and divide it by 5, but we don't know how to do that. Because we don't teach long division anymore. That's old. So here's what we try to do. We try to break it up into smaller problems. Alright, so the way we do this is we try to say, what's the biggest divisible of 5 you can think of? So, divisible of 5 is like 5, 10, 15, blah, blah, blah. So what's the biggest divisible of 5 that we can think of that is less than 360? Okay, well, hopefully, we could keep going with our 5s, but one thing we know is 100 is divisible by 5. We know that. That's hopefully something that we know. If we kept on counting by 5s, we would eventually get to 100. That's pretty big, so here's what we're going to do now. Okay, so 100. Alright, so we know that 100 is divisible by 5, so what we're going to do is we're going to take that chunk out. We're going to subtract 100 from our 360. Okay, and now do a couple things here, right? So we're going to take out that 100. We know that 100 is divisible by 5. 100 divided by 5 is 20. Okay, for this lesson we have to know that 100 divided by 5 is 20. We would know that if we went, counted up by 5s to 100, we would eventually get to 20. So let's just say we know that 100 divided by 5 is 20, and we know that. So we're gonna mark that off as a kind of a green number here. And now we're gonna take 100 off of our original number from 360. So 360 minus 100 is 260. Okay, so that's the chunk we have left to divide. Okay, this all makes sense in the end. All right, we take 100 out, we've got 260 left. So 260 left to account for, and we still, what's the biggest divisible by 5 we can think of that goes into 260? Well, 100 is still, the one we took out before is still less than 260, so let's take off another chunk. So we're going to take off another 100, okay? So, take another 100, divide that by 5, and that equals to 20. When we're doing this on our paper, we're keeping it just like we have here. We're keeping columns like the total over here on the left, start with 360, we take 100 away. Next column, divided by 5 equals 20. Leave that there. And the remainder that we had left was 260. So we'll take another 100 away from that. So minus 100. 100, we say, well, 100 divided by 5 is 20. So we'll keep that in mind. Then our third column here is 100 divided by 5 is 20. So we're going to subtract that from our total that we have. So we had 260 to begin with now. We subtract another 100. Now we're left with 160. Okay? So, same principle applies. Let's take off another chunk of 100. Okay? So, on our next line, we say, alright, we're going to take off another chunk of 100. I know that 100 divided by 5 is 20. So I can put that on my line there. Okay? So now on our third column, so we have our first column, which is 360 minus 100 is 260, minus 100 is 160. Okay? Our second column is we're dividing, whatever we're doing, we're dividing by 5. So, divide by 5. And then our third column was 100 divided by 5 is 20. That's in green. 100 divided by 5 is 20. That's in green. And third time, 100 divided by 5 is 20. That's in green. We're subtracting everything that we're taking out. Okay? 60 left to account for. Okay, that's smaller than 100. So we can't take another 100 out of 60. So what's the biggest multiple of 5 that we can think of that's less than 60? Okay, well, 50 is divisible by 5. So when you're thinking of the biggest numbers you can think of, you could say, well, we'll take the number we're dividing by, 5, and we'll multiply that by 10. So 5 times 10 is 50. Is 50 smaller than 60? Yes. Okay, so let's try to take that away. So now we're going to say, okay, 50 is the next thing we're going to take away. 50 divided by 5 is 10. We're going to mark that in our third column there, indicated as green here on the screen. And then we say, okay, well, we've accounted for that. So 60 minus 50 is 10. There's only 10 left now. 10, we know how to divide 10 by 5. It's 2. Okay? So 10 divided by 5 is evenly 2. Okay? So now we have, if you look at all the green numbers we have, if we add all these numbers together, all these green numbers, that is the answer. Because we've broken it up into smaller chunks. And we basically said, okay, well, I know what 100 divided by 5 is, and I can take we started with 360, so I can take 100 divided by 5 out, and then I can take another 100 and divide that by 5, take that out, etc. Okay? If we add all those numbers together, we get the same answer we would have got if we would have just gone to a calculator and said, what is 360 divided by 5? So, add up all the greens, 20 plus 20 plus 20 plus 10 plus 2, that's 72, okay? You put that in your calculator, 360 divided by 5, you'll get the same answer. So, here's a problem that might come up. Your kid says, well, that's great, but what we learned in school today was we were supposed to have some left over. Like, what's the remainder of this? What did we have left over? Well, this is the first question. The first question is like the easy question, right? It's in the answer book. It's supposed to be the easiest one. The problem we started with here, it doesn't have a remainder because it's easier. All right? Let's adjust the problem a little bit so we would get a remainder. So we're going to start up, we're going to say, instead of dividing 360 by 5, we're going to take 363 by 5. Okay? So, same principle applies. We're going to say, well, we're still dividing by 5. 100 is still the biggest number I can think of that's divisible by 5. So what we're going to do is we're going to say 363 minus 100. That's 263. And then in our other column, we're going to say, well, 100 divided by 5 is 20. So that's part of the answer. Okay? The thing we have left to divide is this 263. So we're going to say, okay, well, that's still more than 100, so I'm going to say that we'll take another 100 away. So we say, all right, we're going to subtract 100 from 263. That'll go on the next line, and then in this column, we're going to say, well, 100 divided by 5 is 20. So we're going to just kind of lock that up. That's part of our answer. Anything in green is part of our answer. So we subtract another 100. That brings us to 163. We can take another 100 away from that. Same thing. Okay? 100 divided by 5 is 20. We've got that in our green. Thing we have left after we say 163 minus 100 is 63. Okay. 100 is bigger, so we still can't do it, but similarly as before, we say, well, what's the biggest number divisible of multiple of 5 we can think of that's less than 63? We start with things like obvious things like, well, 5 times 10 is 50. Okay, let's do that. Let's take that out. So 63 minus 50 is 13. So we write that down all in our first column there. And then 50 divided by 5 is 10. So now in our green column, where we're eventually going to add up the numbers, we have 20, 20, 20, 10. Okay? Thing we have left to divide now, so this is why it's called partial quotient, is because we're taking, instead of taking the whole number, 360, 363, and dividing by 5, we're taking chunks out of that. We're dividing that by 5, and then we'll add those parts up later. So that's why it's partial quotient. Okay. So we take 63 minus 50, that's 13. Okay. How many times does 5 go into that? So if I start counting, 5, 10, 15. Okay, 15's too much, so I got 5, 10. Okay, so 10 is the biggest multiple of 5 that's below 13. So I'm going to say, all right, well, 13 minus 10 is 3. And I took this 10 out, so I need to divide 10 by 5. That equals to 2. I'm going to add that to my green column, okay? Now, the thing that we have different about this problem is that, okay, now we have, there's 3 left. There's 3 left. Since 3 is smaller than 5, I can't, I can't divide 3 by 5 and get a whole number, okay? So this is where the remainder comes in, okay? So 3 is going to be our remainder, and everything that we had in green up to this point is the rest of our answer. So we go back and we say, okay, what did I have in the third column here in green? 20, 20, 20, 10, 2. So 20 plus 20 is 40, plus 20 is 60, plus 10, 70, plus 2, 72. And then I have a remainder of 3, because that's what I had left that I couldn't go into. It doesn't go into 5, so that is what I have left. So that is kind of a quick and dirty explanation of how to do division with partial quotients, and I hope it helped.